Thank you, Springfield Right to Life, and all of you that decided to come here today to memorialize the decision we call Roe versus Wade, Doe versus Volcker, that has brought unspeakable tragedy on America. But I think in light of that, there is a lot to celebrate. So in my way of opening remarks, let me just say I am from Southern California, and sometimes my exuberance and my effervescent personality might get a little loud. It's okay to say amen or to turn the volume down, okay? So, I was called an extremist by Rachel Maddow. That might come as a surprise to you. And I used to take it as an insult, but I no longer take it as an insult because I bought cable television. And as I was watching it, I noticed that there's this fishing program called River Monsters. And in the opening dialogue, he says, I'm not just a fisherman, I'm an extreme fisherman. And I thought, that's cool. Then there's these other guys that jump off of buildings. They're called base jumpers. I call them crazy. But they're not just parachutists. They're extreme parachutists. And believe it or not, there's another program on called, not lying, Extreme Humor. So you can take anything you want, and you can put the word extreme in front of it, and it becomes fun. So I'm an extreme pro-lifer. And I like that. I've also been labeled anti-abortion, and again, I thought that was some sort of pejorative, that I should be taken as an insult. And as I started looking around, I said, wait a minute. Mothers Against Drunk Driving is not a pejorative. It's not a bad name. They tell me what they're against. They're against drunk driving. It's not a pro-sobriety campaign. I think they might have some drinks after their meetings. But it's they're against drunk driving. The anti-smoking campaign that's invaded the entire universe. I can't go to Ireland and go into a pub anymore where it used to be inflamed with cigarette smoke, and it's now clean air. Again, it's not a clean air campaign, they're against smoking. It's not an anti-cancer campaign, it's against smoking. And I think PETA follows the same line. They're not just pro-animal, they're anti-cruelty to animals. So as an anti-abortion extremist, I'm embracing these ideas, and I think we all should, to tell people what we're against. Because abortion is an ugly act of violence that we need to explain to people and show to people what we're against, not only what we're for. And so I ask people like Rachel Maddow, since when is it become evil to be pro-baby? To speak up for the most helpless among us? When did babies become a disease and a parasite to be exterminated like cancer cells? Abortion is not health care. It is the killing of an innocent human life. Abortion does not solve problems. It creates more than we can ever imagine. I believe babies, in fact, are the solution to our problems. Babies are our most precious natural resource. So look at the truth, isn't it? That's it. Brother to that preacher brother, yeah, I got you, amen. So what do we believe? What's our foundation? We believe in the Imago Dei, the ancient old theological statement that we are created in the image and likeness of God Himself. Now we can call it personhood or sanctity of human life or creating a culture of life, but I like to go back to the doctrinal statement of the Imago Dei. We're created in His image, in His likeness. And when you go into the restroom and you look at yourself in the mirror, that is an image of you. It is not you, it's an image of you. And in the same way, we are the image bearers of God Almighty. This is a blessing that the animals and trees and the earth do not have. We are a reflection of His majesty. God says that children are a reward, a gift, a heritage, a blessing. Each one of you is a blessing and a gift. Now, we just had Christmas a few weeks ago. Would you take those Christmas gifts that are wrapped up under the tree so beautifully and take them and throw them into the fire before you even opened them? That's what abortion does too many times every single day. Our enemy, the devil, has waged a war against these children since the days of Genesis until today. He's always hated children. But we know that children are not a curse. As I said, they're a blessing. And when God really wants to knock your socks off with a blessing, He gives you a baby. He calls down from heaven. He says, Troy, I love you so much. I'm not going to give you that SUV you wanted. I'm going to give you a baby. We've had 5 unexpected little blessings in our life, one after another. We named them, that's it, done, finished, caboose. And every one of them is a blessing. My youngest baby is now 8 years old, and I wish we had about 10 or 15 more around the house. So God doesn't curse us with the children. He blesses us with children. Okay? So the question about being an extremist was answered by Dr. Martin Luther King, interesting, with a letter from the Birmingham jail. He said the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate or extremists for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? So I stand here today as an anti-abortion extremist for the extension of justice. When I took over Operation Rescue in 1999, we were a protest group. We used to sit in the front of the doors of abortion clinics and get arrested. And no one's been in jail. Anybody been in jail? I'm not talking about that thing. The other thing. Jail sucks. Okay? Jail's for the other guy. The food is bad, the times are bad, it smells. And as I'm sitting in jail in Placentia, California, I'm thinking, this is really bad. Okay, I'm wasting my time, I can't see my babies, I don't even have a Bible, I just got a bunch of inmates hanging around. Now they're good to preach to, but I have a different sort of ministry, and that's to save babies. I don't belong in the little orange jumpsuits, they belong in the little orange jumpsuits. And when I got out, I started to transform Operation Rescue into an organization that demands justice. It reminds me of that quote from Pat. Anybody see the movie Pat where George C. Scott stands up at the beginning, and I won't quote it verbatim because we're a polite company here. He says, nobody ever won a war for dying for his country. You make the other guy die for his country. So we're not going to win this war by going to jail, I said. We're going to win this war by making the other guys go to jail. Right? Here's the news that you can use. Okay? News you can use. You're not going to hear some Fox News, Rachel Maddow, who's kind of throwing this under the back of the bus here. But there are 3 abortionists serving life sentences right now as we speak. Okay, Brian Finkel, in the hand, Brian Finkel, that's right, David Hamilton, and the infamous Carmen Gosnell. They're all serving life sentences as we speak. That's something that the abortion industry doesn't want you to know, because these guys are bad guys. You don't rise to the level of an abortionist. You know, any doctor will tell you an abortionist is a pariah in the community. You sink to the level of an abortionist. When you can't do anything else, you become a full-time abortionist. So when I took over, I said, we're the largest chain of independently operated abortion clinics called Clínica Médica para Mujer de Hoy, which is basically healthcare for today's women. They had 12 abortion clinics in Southern California. I said, let's take a good hard look at who these people are. And every one of those abortionists had legal problems. Either they had killed somebody, they had botched abortions, multiple abortions, they had drug abuse. One of them, Dia, was actually abusing women on the operating room table and had been caught several times doing it, but the medical board didn't know. So we began to turn them in. We began using the medical board complaint system to our advantage. And you know, at the end of the day, every single one of those abortionists lost their medical license to practice medicine. And the person holding the keys to those abortion clinics was Bertha Bluger. She didn't have a medical license, and she began doing these abortions herself. She's serving 7 years in San Diego jail right now for doing illegal abortions. People say, because you're waging war. No, we're not waging war. The other side is waging war against the babies. We're waging peace. We're bringing peace to the world. They're the ones waging war against the babies. We need a strategic plan for victory. Anytime you you go into battle, when you wage peace, you want to have a strategy to win. And so we need to start thinking more strategically like our generals. I look back through the war, the Civil War, we're talking about how Illinois participated in the Civil War. But I also look back at World War II. There was a point on August 17, 1943, where the Allied forces got together and we said, you know what? Those doggone Luftwaffe airplanes are flying over here and they're bombing us every single day. We got to take them out. And there's one thing that every single rifle, turret, tank, jeep, airplane needs, and that's ball bearings. But there's only one ball bearing plant in all of the Allied forces. So we sent 1,400 planes over there. And at the end of the day, we lost over 200 of them. 800 men had gone either missing or in POW camps. And the Allied forces thought it was a complete failure. But you know what? We got that ball bearing plant. And the Luftwaffe stopped flying soon after. They began cannibalizing tanks just for a ball bearing. Reminds me of that old poem, remember, For Want of a Nail? Everybody remember that poem? For want of a nail, a horse was lost. Or for want of a horse, a rider was lost. For want of a rider, a battle was lost. For want of a battle, a war was lost. All for want of a nail. And so strategically, we are winning this victory one day at a time, one prayer at a time, one baby at a time. Here's another great example. In Missouri, in 1987, they passed a law that said abortionists had to have hospital privileges within the state. And in 1989, the 8th Circuit upheld that, and the abortion clinic closed. And I was watching that. And then in 2005, Missouri actually tightened that law, not to have just hospital privileges in the state, but hospital privileges within 30 miles. I said, there we go. That's how we win. We passed that law in Kansas. We passed that law in Mississippi. No person would spend millions of dollars to pass a personal bill and lost by 35% increase in Mississippi a few years ago. Great effort, courageous effort. But at the end of the day, it just took one little piece of legislation. And right now, this year, the next couple of months, we're going to court on this. We passed the 30-mile rule law where abortionists has to have hospital privileges within 30 miles. The last abortion clinic in Mississippi could soon close if we win this lawsuit. And that's going to be I said, hey, this is good stuff. Let's export this. I went down to Texas. You remember the big battles that Whitney Davis and Governor Rick Perry? She withstood a filibuster once, but he came back up the next day and said, we're going to have another special session. And the reason we're going to have it is because we want to pass some very strategic legislation. I wanted three things. Let's make these abortion clinics ambulatory surgical centers. We know they can't comply. They're operating as strip malls most of the time. They can't comply. Number two, we want to put some real common sense approach to RE46. I don't want it at all, but they're using it off-label. Force them to make them use it the way the FDA protocol said. They won't do it, and they haven't been able to do it. And last thing is, make the abortions have hospital privileges within 30 miles. You know what? The very day that law went into effect, 16 abortion clinics closed. Bam! I want you to think about this. Listen, repeat after me. When abortion clinics close, babies are saved. Babies are saved. Remember that. When abortion clinics close, babies are saved. Here's the other thing that's keeping abortion clinics open. You probably experienced this here in Illinois. I know you do after the death of Tony Reeves up in Chicago. The gatekeepers. These people, the politicians, the boards of medicine, sometimes the district attorneys, and they cover up. They cover up for the abortionists. Well, Laura Goldsmith died up in Hyannis, Massachusetts. The district attorney did the same thing. But all the activists on our email list, if you ever want to become one of these online activists, go to Operation Rescue and sign up. And we sent an email within just a day after Laura Goldsmith died, and sent an email out to all our supporters and said, call this guy, email this guy. And within 2 hours after this email went out, the district attorney called me up and said, call the dogs off. I'm going to file charges. It's true.